to St Paul's United Reformed Church. For some of you, this will be a very familiar building. For others, it will be your first time, so it's great to welcome you here. I'm Martin Knight, I'm minister of the church here, and I'm looking forward to sharing 10 things about St Paul's with you. So number one, we start with the buildings themselves. Construction on this site started with a hall and additional rooms, completed in May 1901. It now serves as our large hall, which is used for various church events as well as community activities, like children's parties, wedding receptions, Pilates, and so much more. Moving across the site, there is an entrance from the car park, an office, youth room, and at the back, a kitchen with a small hall, the essential toilet block, and a vestry meeting room. We are then led to the sanctuary, which was built in 1905, just 4 years after the hall was outgrown. The whole complex is built in the Gothic style of red brick and white Portland stone and is Grade 2 listed. Originally, this was a Presbyterian Church of England pastorate, but since 1972, with the union with the Congregational Church in England and Wales, it has been a United Reformed Church. This visionary union of churches continued with the Association of Churches of Christ in 1981 and the Congregational Union of Scotland in 2000. It's really good to welcome Steve Savage, who will be known to some, but will be an unfamiliar face to others. Steve, you've been doing tours of this church for some time now, I think.
Probably, I guess, for probably about 10 years. Different school groups we've taken round, and also when we've had the Heritage Days, we've opened the church to different people. And they've really welcomed being told about the history and the architecture of the building.
So let's go into the space.
Presbyterian church traditionally is, I've always thought, quite austere, and that really holds good here, where you've got a very dark vestibule, heavy double doors, dim lighting. The whole concept being that in a Presbyterian Reformed church there should be no distraction from what is being taught, and certainly the words of the minister. Therefore, it's always been a delight for me that when we do go into the sanctuary, it's a total surprise and a wealth of colour.
So welcome to St Paul's Sanctuary.
From this point at the west end of the church, you do get the best view of the colour of the church. And especially the enhancement that we had at the end of the last millennium, when a number of church groups got together and designed the 8 millennium banners that we had under the guidance and direction of Heather Richardson. Now they all tell the story of St. Paul, which is really quite apposite for the church and as we're all on a journey. From the far left side, we have the conversion of St. Paul with the dazzling light shining down on him. Next shows him being lowered in a basket as he escapes the wrath of the strict Jews in Damascus. The third one, he is shown on the road during his first journey with Barnabas, known as the Son of Encouragement. And finally, on the left, the banner shows Paul in jail in Philippi. The chains are broken during an earthquake, but he and Silas stay put to save the jailer from killing himself. On the far right-hand side, we first have the burning of the scrolls of spells at Ephesus. Then we see Paul writing one of his many letters to Christian communities around the Mediterranean. Then the drama of the shipwreck on his way to trial in Rome, which Paul is then led to spend time in Malta. Finally, we have a picture of Paul under armed guard in Rome during the last days of his life.
Item number 3 on our tour is looking at the beautiful woodwork that's around the sanctuary space, but particularly looking at the panelling here in the chancel. Back in 2018, I received an email out of the blue from the grandson of George Goodsir, who was one of the founders of this building. And he was wanting to come with some of his family to look at some of the stained glass that was left in memory of George. What neither they nor I knew is that the wonderful oak panelling in the chancel area was purchased using £1,000 given to the church in Mr. Goodsir's will. It was designed by his brother John and includes a plaque in memory. I am particularly fond of the beautiful dove at the very, very top. Item number 4 follows on quite naturally as we look at the war memorials in our sanctuary space. We start by looking at a brass plaque which is set into the wood panelling that we've just been looking at. The plaque states that the window above, so what is now the nativity window, but what then would have been the resurrection window, is dedicated to the memory of worshippers of this church who died during the Great War. This new memorial window includes the face of Jesus, a fragment from the destroyed resurrection window. The base and the flames symbolise the turmoil and damage inflicted by enemy action. The bands of green and brown represent the hills and valleys of East Surrey on which the church stands. The winding rows and leaves are the rising spirit of Christianity and the new life of the restored church. Over here in the south transept is a porch that leads out through a door, then across the garden and onto Crome Road. It used to be really well used by the care home next door for the members that would come from there to church. Now, it's a flower cupboard. Hidden in here is a memorial to those killed in the First World War from St George's Church. St Paul's is the daughter church of St George's and was founded by 8 of its members. The St George's building remains today as a Masonic lodge on Oakfield Road. Number 5 on our list is the first section of stained glass windows, beginning here with the lancet windows, which thankfully Steve knows a lot more about than I do.
Here on the north wall we have 6 beautiful lancet windows. They're called lancet windows simply because they're tall and thin and the arch at the top is pointed, so it resembles a lance.
The first 2 windows show St Peter and St Paul. Both are bareheaded, barefooted and both with beards. They are both dressed in blue, and this could be Presbyterian blue. They are identified by their symbols: for St. Peter, the keys to heaven, and for St. Paul, the sword of the Spirit. Next come the four Gospel writers. In the first one, Matthew is seen holding a quill pen and has the figure of the angel. Next we get John, also with a quill and with his well-known symbol of the eagle. Then there's Luke, similarly with a quill and also with the symbol of the sacrificial calf. And finally St. Mark, also holding the quill pen, and with him is the famous symbol of the lion.
On this south wall of the sanctuary, we again have 6 lancet windows. Now they show the 4 patron saints of the British Isles and also 2 early Christian saints. We start off here quite appropriately with St. Andrew, and there he is with his the saltire cross that he's leaning on. Yeah, so the patron saint of Scotland. We next move on to St. George, the patron saint of England, who's standing there with his traditional lance and his St. George's cross on the face of the shield. We're going to jump 2 lancet windows now in the middle and go on to the last of 2 patron saints. The first one up here is St. Patrick, patron saint of Ireland, and there he is with his episcopal staff, and wrapped round it is a picture of a snake. Do you remember the story of St. Patrick driving out the snakes from Ireland? And then finally we've got the Welsh patron saint of St. David, again with his archiepiscopal staff in his hand. We jumped over 2 of the middle lancet windows, and that's because they were the last to come in. This is St. Columba, who's well known for his founding the cathedral in Iona, and there he is with the cathedral behind him, blessing the congregation. And the final one here is St. Alban, who people believe was the first Christian martyr in England. One interesting fact about this picture of St. Alban is the detail in the face of St. Alban. St. Alban's obviously a soldier, you can see how he's dressed there, and it is believed that that is a representation of the face of the son of George Goodsir. So he died in the Second World War, and he's part of the memorial plaques. Okay, so here we are in the North Transept, and we're looking at the west wall of the North Transept. And here we have another representation in stained glass of St. George. This time he's not only got his lance, he's also got a sword in his hand, and he's standing on the head of the dragon that he's just slain. Now this window was dedicated by the uniformed organisations, the Scouts, the Cubs, the Guides and the Brownies, back in 1952. And you can see just at the bottom of that window, they've got their symbols of their different organisations at the bottom there. So this is the one saint that we've actually got 2 pictures of. Over in the corner here, I must admit this is my favourite. This is the stained glass window of Martha of Bethany. You may remember the story of Martha, who was the sister of Mary, both sisters of Lazarus. The story goes that Martha here, who's carrying a ewer jug in one hand, she's got the keys in the other, obviously a very busy lady. She's doing a lot of work. The story at the time, if you remember, was that Martha was doing the work, Mary was sitting at Jesus' feet, and Martha almost complained to Jesus, why aren't I getting any help? And he just made her understand that there is a time and a place for work, and there's a time and a place for worship. And he really wanted Martha to sit down and to listen to what was being said.
On the west wall is a beautiful window given in memory of Corinna Louise Preston, who was the daughter of one of our elders, John Preston, and she died prematurely at the age of 16 in 1989 following replacement heart surgery. The window was designed by Edwin Payne of Box in Gloucestershire. The quotation on it says, "Farewell but not forever," and this is taken from the finale of Elgar's Dream of Gerontius and is the inspiration behind the creation of the window, where the angel is seen ascending with Corinna towards heaven.
For number 7, let's have a look at our beautiful font. We can see some beautiful carving, particularly around the top. And there's an inscription on a Bible that says, "The word of the Lord endureth forever." In many churches, the font is placed at the west end, near the south door. The symbolism is that as you enter the church, you pass the baptismal font. You are reminded that entry into the life of the church is by baptism. In days before pews nailed to the floor, it was easy enough for the congregation to turn round and be part of the baptism. It simply became practical in church architecture for the font to be moved to the front. But the important symbolism is still preserved. We have the pulpit, showing the centrality of the Word of God. The communion table highlights the importance of the sacrament of Holy Communion. And the font shows the sacrament of baptism, by which we enter the faith. So these three are always before us as a congregation in worship. The font also includes an image on the front of a dove. Relatively recently, in the last few years, we started to light a peace candle here on the top of the font to really remind us and help us to focus as a congregation on being people of peace, as Christ was the King of Peace. Moving on to number 6, we're going to be looking at the organs, as we currently have 2 wonderful instruments. Our Lewis organ here has served St Paul's really well since 1906. Thomas Christopher Lewis was a leading organ builder of the late 19th century in Britain, heavily inspired by Edmund Scholz in Germany and the renowned Cavaille Coll in France. His organs have a bright, vibrant tone with astonishingly high-quality pipework, even in the hidden depths of the case where no one would ever see them. After 125 years of service, St Paul's Lewis needed a £100,000 rebuild, which was well beyond our means. So it's hoped that the pipework will speak again in another church in Croydon. Those conversations continue. Here we are at the console of the Lewis pipe organ. This is where the keys are and the foot pedals to be able to play the instrument. And all of the pipework, some of which you've just seen, is all hidden up here in the chamber behind us. So it'll be interesting to see if we can get something out of it that's vaguely in tune. Yep, fairly out of tune, lots of dead notes, but that's what the situation is with it. So this is the wonderful new Allen organ that we had installed last year. You can see it's a substantially bigger instrument. It has 3 keyboards, it has a whole array of stops of various different kinds, which give it its wonderful sound, and it speaks beautifully into our building. All the speakers are up near where the pipes are for the Lewis organ, so it gives a very realistic sound. number 8, I'm going to hand back over to Steve, who's going to introduce us to some more fantastic stained glass.
Well, here we are in the south transept, and above me we've got what is known as the Good Sir windows. There are 3 superb windows that were dedicated by George Goodsir, who was a session clerk in the church and also one of the first founders of the church.
The top window is a classic rose shape. The central feature is the cross in a halo of light. The frame of stone is surrounded by 6 angels, 2 above, 1 on either side and 2 below. And between these angels are roundels, each of which contains a picture of a different flower. All of these figures are linked together by a long circular scroll. I find the words on the scroll are difficult to see from the ground, but they're taken from Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, and they say, "Now is Christ risen, and become the first fruits of them that slept." Below the rose window are 2 scenes from Easter Sunday. On the left, we can see the story from Mark 16, when the 3 women, Mary Magdalene, Salome, and Mary the mother of James, all brought spices to the tomb, expecting to be able to anoint the body of Jesus. They find that the stone has already been rolled back, and on entering the tomb they see a young man clothed in long white garments. The text here is, "He is risen, he is not here." The right-hand window depicts another scene from Easter Sunday, taken from the Gospel of John, chapter 20, and shows Mary Magdalene on her own garden after the other disciples had left. And she turns from the empty tomb to find Jesus standing there. The text says, "Touch me not, for I am not yet ascended to my Father." The windows are personalised to the life of George Goodsir by the 2 coats of arms shown in the tracery. The coat of arms of Musselburgh is shown on the left, and this is where George was born. And also the arms of the George Watson College in Edinburgh, where he went to school, is shown on the right.
Here in the east end of the church, we have our beautiful nativity window, which shows the nativity scene at the time of Christ's birth. As many of you will know, this window was originally positioned in the west end of the church. But in 1944, a bomb dropped quite close to the church, and the east window, the original one that was there, which was called the resurrection window, was completely destroyed. After the war, it was decided that the whole of what was the west window would be repositioned up into the east, and so that is what we've got there now. This shows the angels around the throne above Christ. It's got the Mary over on the left there kneeling down, and Joseph standing on the left, on the far left, with what I think is a brilliant piece of lighting, in that the lamp in his hand, the type of glass they've got in there means that it always shines, even in the darkest day outside. Over on the right, we've got the shepherds coming in from the hills. The lovely window, there's a lot on it. Right at the very top, it's quite hard to see, is the representation of the dove, which is the Holy Spirit arising.
At number 9, we move into our garden space with its wonderful traffic noise. The first thing to point out is the majestic giant sequoia, the giant redwood, which is protected with a tree preservation order. These trees are most famously found in America, with the tallest example in Canyon National Park in California at 311.4 feet tall. We use our gardens for wedding photos, youth work, occasional services in the summer, and it also serves as a memorial garden. The ashes of several members of St Paul's are buried here in the garden, and their names added to a panel inside the church, with 2 or 3 others still needing to be added. As part of our church vision, a welcoming church, we will be aiming to refresh this garden space and to open up the view of the church buildings. Number 10 on our list of things to see at St Paul's really had to be the people, the community that make up the body of Christ in this part of South Croydon. Unsurprisingly, our buildings feel empty, with no children running down the corridor, no one from our community exercising in the hall, no gathering for worship and marking key moments in our lives. In these strange times, this community still exists, online, over the phone, and simply being good neighbours to each other. And this family has grown, with fresh faces in our social events and in junior church, and with the real joy of sharing with friends from South Croydon United Church. How we are together will be different, but we are still the wonderful people of God, with a future that is in God's hands. It has been a real joy to welcome you here to St Paul's as we have a look around the buildings and give you a chance to look at the top 10 things that we thought about to show you.
And before we go, can I just say a big thank you to everyone in the past who has written so much about the history of St Paul's. Tony Farquhar Jones and Ken Obridge, all the work they did on the information we have on the stained glass and the different plaques around the building. Without them, without their dedication, we would not have the beauty of the church that we have today.
Again, thank you so much for coming, and we look forward to welcoming you back just as soon as we can open in the near future.